After the end of the Horus Heresy begins the era of ruin. What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. So if you guys are following the new lore for the Horus Heresy, you know that after the End in the Death Volume 3, basically we have a new galaxy at our hands, and there is essentially a blank period where we know very little as to what happened after the Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne and the events of the 41st millennium. So here we see a new novel called The Era of Ruin, which is basically trying to fill in that gap as to what happened after the end of the heresy, and we see that this novel is a bunch of short stories in anthology form. So I'm going to be reading from the Carrion Lord, which gives us new information that cements some of the history behind that of the Adeptus Custodes. So without further ado, guys, let's dive into this new, exciting lore on the Guardians of the Emperor. The Adeptus Custodes do not die like the other living beings in this galaxy. They do not age like other mortals, and for them, death is unfortunate, for they can be killed, of course. Many of them have been. However, they represent the pinnacle of genetic archaeoscience. One of the servants in the dungeon laboratories spent their entire life studying the blood of a custode. However, she died before seeing any change in his blood cells. For a very long time, they didn't know if they even aged. Those of the Astartes can, their genetic code has always been an imperfect mass-crafted production. But for them, once the age of their physical apex was reached, they simply stopped aging. Was their creation weaved with temporal sorcery? Or perhaps it was something undetectable that their king, the Emperor, simply did not tell them. One theory is that some of them believe that without reason, they do not age if they stay within the presence of the Emperor, and something linking his body and soul confers them immortality. Each of the 10,000 represented years of laboratory flesh crafting. Each of them was tailored, crafted in a defined goal. They were his guardians in a war, and his consciousness in time of crisis. But he couldn't build an empire with them alone. They were only 10,000, and if the galaxy's song is a merged shout of hundreds of billions of stars, their existence is a simple whisper. They suspected that they were not made like the Primarchs, from metaphysics and loaned essence. From the beginning, they suffered no flaws. And this poses the question as to only beings such as Constantine, Hador, or Ra can answer. Is there something in them? One aspect of their loyalty based on egoism? One that makes them immortal to the sole condition that their king lives? Such are the secret questions that they have asked themselves since their creation, and the kind of psychological and physiological dilemma that they shared with their suzerain. I never asked him such questions. At that time, I considered my simplicity with honor. I said to Ra that I didn't care about the answers. Sometimes as I walked in the catacombs as they are now, I wondered if I ever saw past these days. If he had hid the reality of nature to the humans and the truth of obsolescence to those of the Astartes, is there some truth of a magnificent darkness that he preserved from us? Did I stay silent because I trusted my king, or because I feared of what he could have revealed? After the Horus Heresy, the 10,000 had their first funerals. They didn't know what to do. The Custodes know what death is from their education, and they know the funeral rites of countless other cultures, but they don't have their own rites, for none of them had ever perished. All this knowledge was academic until the moment it wasn't. Sagittarius was the first to suffer lethal wounds, and his dying body had been linked to life-preserving systems in a cradle sarcophagus of a dreadnought. He would stay asleep for most of the time to support his fractured mind, but he still lived, in one way or another. Then there were others, the Moritoi, the living beings that were lethally wounded but saved from death and still able to fight. Xerxes is dead, however, truly dead. How could they mark the death of one of them? And now we have some more lore on their thoughts behind the creation of the Primarchs. And thus we were assembled, not all, not even the majority of us, only some of us, those here by luck, fate, or merely summoned. The others, those of the 10,000 whom our king trusted more than anyone else, already shared their impressions before, but we were there, assembled under a weak glow, where it seemed no light could pierce the darkness. And one after another, each of us said no. The gazes all turned to him. All wait for him to speak and join the chorus of oaths that the blade will be enough, that the Custodes will lead the armies of the Imperium, no transhuman legions, no demigods as generals. These creations were superfluous. You don't need them, he could have said. You don't need to steal the Immaterium's essence. You don't need to create these things, these Primarchs. Diocletian says the truth, as always to the Emperor, as they always do. Tonight, however, his truth is different from their own. Diocletian pushes on his spear and bows his head towards the Emperor. I think none of what I could say matters. I think nothing of what anyone has said tonight matters. With all my respects, my king, I think you will do what you had already planned. So this is pretty interesting because we learned that pretty much unanimously, all of the Custodes had outright said no to the creation of the Primarchs. They said that the Custodes would be the ones to usher humanity into this new age, to be the protectors of humanity and the warriors of the Emperor. But the Emperor already had his mind set, so why even ask for their opinion? If there is one topic who creates more interrogations and has flown more ink in the analysis than other, it is simply this one. Why did the Primarchs betray? Hato asked a better question, one that still haunts me. Why didn't they do it sooner? The Primarchs, from their first steps in the galaxy, existed in a state of disunion. They distrusted each other. The accomplishments of their brothers created resentment. They fought each other even before the Great Rebellion. Each of them said the others were wrong. Each of them believed in the rightfulness of their acts, never compromising. And still, Hato's question stays. Was this leaning for inner fighting born from the Emperor giving charge of a spirit to his creations? Were they fundamentally and spiritually incomplete? I don't think so. Actually, I believe the opposite. The Primarchs were perfectly achieved. The Emperor succeeded too much in his work. Each of them incarnated their creator to a degree near his entirety. Each of them had his Messiah needing, of an absolute unification the 10,000 saw in their king. The Primarchs didn't fight because the Emperor didn't achieve them. They hated each other because they were all an Emperor. Dio was ready to kill Roboute Guilliman. He knows with more certainty than ever. He knows that if the self-appointed Lord Commander of the Imperium does not shut up right now, Dio and the Custodes at his side, as well as the few sisters, hidden and persecuted in this great chamber, will draw their blades and kill this creature who believes he can be the Emperor's heir. Many times they endured Guilliman's speeches, his intentions, his orders going so far against his brother's wishes that a new conflict seemed nearly here. A new war in which Guilliman's vision of the Imperium would be the culprit. Do you hear me, Diocletian? I call for unity in an era where we need it more than ever. Diocletian listened. He hears no call for unity, but orders to obey. The era in which a call to unity would have been needed was decades ago, when half of Guilliman's brothers drowned the galaxy in blood and fire. Are you done? Asked Diocletian quietly. This is how he sees the world outside of his brothers and sisters. He is void of warmth, and he considers almost no one his genetic superior. He is decisive, authoritarian, and lacks patience. This perception does not bother him. He doesn't care for how he is seen by others. His opinion is that he is considered worthwhile belonging to men and women, a good part laying in their grave. I watched the death of my king's dreams, and then the death of my king. I watched half of your kind rebel against the Empire, and it took us almost 3 centuries to build. I watch you turn it to ash. I've watched even the most loyal of you scheme against yourselves, whine about who was favored over whom, and go to war over your arrogances. Like some moronic pantheon of ancient gods, you and the malformed coven of tainted genetics you call a family have no right to set foot upon this world. You say you lost a father, but you didn't. You lost the scientist that created you. You lost the visionary that had such high hopes for you, but he was never your father. Your fathers love you dearly, Primarch. Even now they dance through the warp, laughing at what good boys you've all been. You say the Emperor would trust you now with the resurrection of the Imperium. If he trusted you, why did he need 10,000 bodyguards? And why weren't you one of them? Why weren't you called upon to defend the webway? Why did he entrust the most vital task to his true chosen? Why, whenever he related the truth to the galaxy, was it never his sons that he told? Diocletian could say all of this. Diocletian leaves the chamber, and Guilliman's gaze weighs on his back. Kara, at his side, performs a ballet of Thoughtmark. Her feeling is cold, but it warms Diocletian by its sincerity. She feels the stench of defeat upon Guilliman as an aura around him. She thinks that he will die soon. They will all die, Diocletian answers. They haven't been made to be eternals, like us. And with that being said, guys, that is all I have for today. Of course, if you guys want more lore, more insight into what happens after the end of the heresy, definitely get your hands on this novel. The anthologies, I believe there's 9 of them here, so there's a lot more avenues to explore besides just the point of view of the Custodes. But here we learn that the Custodes really didn't care at all for the Primarchs. If it was up to them, they would have never existed in the first place. And you can see, after everything that happened to ruin the Emperor's vision, the Emperor's ideal, true unified Imperium, was all thanks to his creations, the Primarchs. So again, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more things Warhammer 40K. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of OneMindSyndicate, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.